and Sarah and Caroline will walk us through that. Then we'll take about an hour to hear the second of two presentations. So it's really a presentation series on the initiatives that are currently underway. And this is just an opportunity to showcase all of the really great things that our community members are working on, and also to share opportunities to get involved in those initiatives if you would like to be involved in them some way going forward. That should take about an hour. So if you're primarily here for the initiatives, you can expect to, we'll be wrapping up with those at maybe 10 after the hour, 15 after the hour. And then we'll move into all of the business updates for CMP. And I think we can wait to go into those one by one until we get to that portion of the meeting. So I think I'll turn it over to Sarah and Caroline to share the exciting new websites.
Okay, Sarah,
Go.
All right, let's see how we do. Here we go.
Perfect. So hi everyone, I'm Sarah Weber. If you haven't had me bugging you in your email recently, I'm the consultant working with Caroline to help coordinate CMP and also working on communications. So it is really exciting today to announce that we are doing our soft launch of our brand new websites that are for the Conservation Standards, the Conservation Measures Partnership, and very shortly CCNet as well. We've had a really fantastic team working on this. I only joined in July and they've been working on it for many months previous to that. So this is our fantastic team working with the website company Evermaven on our websites. So this is just, as of right now, just some screenshots from what the websites look like, but you can see at the bottom of the screen what the new URL will be. We are going to ask for all of your help in the next month or so to help us identify any bugs or things you think should be changed before we publicly announce these awesome new websites to the world. So I've created a Google form that you'll be able to fill in. The URL is right there, but we instead will also be sending you an email after the meeting with the direct URL to add your input, as well as the URLs for the websites, and a link to register for our official website launch event, which will be in January. Go to the next one, Caroline. Yeah, so right now this is a soft launch because we're just telling our CMP members and CCNet members about the websites and not doing any more publicity than that until we've worked out any of the kinks that you may have found within it. So on January 19th at 4 p.m. Eastern, we're going to have our official launch of the websites, where it will be put on social media, do more of a formal email blast to CMP and CCNet, with some suggested points to have your partner share about the website if they use the conservation standards. And there will be a Zoom event that will go through in more depth and detail what each of the websites can now do. We have a lot more functionality in them, as well as they're just a lot more pretty to look at. So hopefully that'll be a fun time for all of us to just see where we've moved on with them. So that will be on January 19th. So look for an email from me following this call that will have the link for you to make any comments about the websites that you think should be changed or augmented, or anything yet that you really like. We'd love to hear some positive comments as well. And then also you'll get a link where you can register for our official launch event if you would like to join us or have time. And Caroline, I think, is going to go through a very quick sort of overview of what our websites look like now.
Great, thank you, Sarah. So I will put in a caveat here that these literally just launched within the last couple of hours. Last night I was a little panicked because I was getting 404 errors on all of these, but our developers got everything up and running for the most part. You saw that Sarah had in one of the slides, there was mention of conservationstandards.org. That will be the new URL for what is now cmpopenstandards.org. It is not live yet, though. It will hopefully be live later today or tomorrow. And just in case you're worried, we will have redirects. So if you have existing materials that point to the CMPOpenstandards.org website, they will redirect to the conservationstandards.org site. And then one other comment too is the CCNet website is also not quite live yet, but is expected to be live later today. So just to show you a little bit, we really wanted to make a strong connection among the three groups, CMP, the Conservation Standards, and CCNet. And so we've set it up so that everyone, the landing page for each one of these looks like this. If you're on the CMP Open Standards or conservationstandards.org, this is in the middle. If I were to click on conservationmeasures.org, that would be in the middle. But so there's whichever website you end up entering, you'll get this as your landing page, and then you can choose to enter the site. So just a few things. We tried to really use a lot of the great imagery we have in our community, and many of you provided images for that you see here. So, and we're trying to do a little bit better of a job of storytelling about what we do. So, so we're really applying new, I guess, principles of kind of updated principles of web design. Some things to point out. Each one of these websites has a take action area. And this is really designed to get people to do things we want them to do, really draw out the key things we want. So whether it's downloading the conservation standards, going and looking through our resource library, getting involved, so becoming a CMP member, becoming a CCNet coach, visiting any of our partner or collaborator websites, and how they can contact us. I would just invite you to kind of take a look around and, as Sarah mentioned, provide feedback and suggestions. I want to point out a couple of things. We felt that these websites were so much better than what we had that we are launching with some things that aren't exactly the way we want them to be yet. And just as an example, in the case studies area, we have a whole bunch of tiles here, but over time we want to populate these with images so that you kind of get the visual too that goes along with the case study. So we'll be working on that. And maybe one more thing to point out, the resource library, that's remained largely unchanged. It maybe looks a little better, but it's pretty similar to what was on the Conservation Standards website previously. We did do an update of that in 2019. So if you're kind of remembering the library the way it used to be 2 or 3 years ago, it has definitely improved, but we just didn't do any more changes to it right now. And one thing we'd like to do over time, we're exploring the idea of combining libraries with CCNet and seeing if that would be how that would work and how we could maybe get all resources in one place, but without overwhelming our users. So I'll leave it there and just invite people to go ahead and explore and provide us your feedback. So I guess maybe we do have that feedback form. If there's any quick questions, maybe we can take them, but otherwise I'd say let's move into the initiative showcase.
Yeah, thanks, Caroline. And Sarah and the whole group, those look fantastic. I can't wait to dive in. They look just great. Very modern. So moving into the initiatives, Caroline, I think you have on your slides there a list of the initiatives that we're going to be seeing. So
Yeah.
I could either introduce them, or if you want to walk through them on your slideshow here as an introduction.
Sure.
Go ahead.
Sure. They're also in the notes too. So if you're following along in the notes, and I apologize, I don't really know what to do about this bar that ends up blocking the very bottom here, but we're going to be looking at 4 different initiatives that are part of a broader collaborative learning initiative. We have conservation standards marketing, it's PowerPoint overhaul, climate guidance. There's a guidance review committee. We're going to hear from them, and then the easy conservation standards. So maybe I can introduce the collaborative learning ones and then turn them over to the leads. So this is an initiative that is funded with money from the Moore Foundation, and it's been really great because it's helped CMP members and our partners jumpstart a lot of really important initiatives that we've wanted to or have been involved with but haven't been able to put as much time and effort into them as is needed and as we want to. So having this support has helped us make that time and also work with others to help us get the work done. So it's the aim of the initiative is to harness the collective knowledge of CMP and our partners and to use cross-organizational learning, what CMP was really founded to do, to inform and improve conservation action on the ground. There are 8 different initiatives. I won't read all of them here. You've heard from some of them in the past. The ones that have stars here are ones we are highlighting in this showcase. And then I'll mention also, which I think we're going to talk about in a little bit, but we are planning starting in 2021 to do some little mini series webinars where we can highlight these and even other initiatives and just take like half an hour, give people more time to present their initiatives and do a Q&A, but also keep the time for you all who are very busy limited. And so Sarah or I will be sending around more information about that as well. And I will leave it at that and pass it over to Sarah Mason.
All right, great.
Sarah, did you? Yeah.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. David, did you want to just say 2 words before I start, or should I just jump right in?
I think you can just jump right in.
Okay, great. Well, I will say that David Wilkie from WCS and Paulina Arroyo from the Moore Foundation did act as advisors on this project. So I just want to start out by thanking them. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Sarah Mason. I work as a policy associate at the Environmental Policy Research Institute at Duke University. And I'll just kick us off discussing this project that I helped to oversee that took place over the last 10 months or so. And with me today is Mariana Vedovedo, who is one of the grad students who helped lead this work. And next slide, please. So this project was really completed in 2 parts. The first part focusing on how does external finance influence national commitments to biodiversity through protected areas. And the second part focusing on how the COVID-19 pandemic influenced those same national commitments to protected areas. And if you go to the next slide, to answer these questions, we completed a total of 25 interviews with protected area experts from countries all over the world. And I'll just present the very sort of high level findings that we heard from them in answers to those 2 main questions. And so on the next slide, I'll summarize the responses to our question, does external financing influence internal spending on protected areas by governments? And for those interviewees who answered no, it was for one of 2 reasons. And if you click again, it shows that one of those reasons was that the government has other priorities and would be unlikely to spend money on protected areas regardless. And the second reason was that the government doesn't tend to accept external funding for protected areas anyway. So the question is somewhat moot. If instead the answer to this question, does external financing influence internal spending on protected areas, was yes, that could either be a positive or a negative relationship. So for those who said that it was negative, they indicated that this was because when protected areas receive external money, the government chooses to divert funds originally allocated for protected areas elsewhere. And if instead it's a positive relationship, it was for one of four reasons. The first was that stipulations were built into external funding mechanisms that required contributions by the government. Second was that external funding positively influenced political will to invest in protected areas. Next was that external funding increased protected area capacity, which enabled them to more effectively lobby governments for money. And then finally, that external funding, which leads to management innovations, can actually incentivize the government to invest in effectively managed protected areas. And with that, I will hand it over to Mariana to talk about the findings related to our COVID question.
Thank you, Sarah. Can everyone hear me well? Yeah, thank you. So good afternoon or good morning, everyone. I'm Mariana and I will be presenting some findings on the interviews we conducted with experts this past few months. And here's the first point we want to highlight, that the cleansing funds are expected to expand. So 30% of our interviewees, they mentioned that that in terms of government budget, they haven't really seen any meaningful changes so far. But it might be because budgets are planned in the previous year or at the beginning of each fiscal year, right? So the impact of COVID-19 hasn't been seen in government budgets, but they expect that this impact will be more noticeable and drastic in 2021. Other 70% of the interviewees, they saw a modest or substantial budget change. And this is mainly due to tourism. We've seen a big drop in tourism due to COVID, which has affected protected areas and protected area systems that rely more on this source of revenue. Something interesting that interviewees also mentioned was the particular case of private protected areas, because usually they solely rely on tourism and government funds rarely or never reach these areas, although they are very important if we take an integrated landscape approach to conservation. And these areas, they don't have another clear source of funding, and they seem to be unassisted, which affect their sustainability and the sustainability of the landscape. Next, please. The other point that multiple respondents brought up was the importance of existing relationships between governments, protected area systems, and protected areas managers, and multilateral funding organizations prior to the pandemic. So it seems that those parks and networks that have already this kind of trustworthy relationship with multilateral organizations, they were more able to access emergency funding during the pandemic, or this also has allowed for more flexibility in terms of how to spend money from these multilateral organizations, which is crucial to respond to this sort of emergency. And the next point is if we look at more resilient funding mechanisms, respondents suggested more attractive options based on their experience or the experience of other countries. So some examples are first, debt for nature swap. So given that several countries will need to borrow funds in order to recover from the pandemic, why not condition this need on investments in nature? Another option that 4 countries highlighted was the potential and importance of expanding and strengthening the project finance for permanence, which has been seen in Latin America. And interviewees thinks that this is a promising and feasible financial option to create more resilient protected areas in the face of future shocks. Another funding option that respondents mentioned was—
sorry to interrupt, we're just at time there.
Okay, sorry. So I can just go for to the last point, which is the importance of transparency. That our interviewees mentioned that, okay, we need more funding, but it's also as important to look at how funding is disbursed and managed, and how this hasn't been very transparent so far. So yeah, these were the main points we wanted to highlight from our interviews. And next slide, please. We are happy to respond to any questions or receive any comments or feedback. We won't have the chance to do it now, but you can reach out to us through the email you see on the slide, and we will be very grateful from hearing from you. And thank you for the opportunity to share these results with you.
So, Catherine, do we have any time for questions?
No, sorry.
Okay. So,
Mariana and Sarah, well done.
yeah, it's great. I look forward to hearing about it, reading about it. Could we move on to Leander, I believe is giving this summary?
Nope, that's Adrian. Leander's not here
Adrian.
today.
Okay, all right, great.
Yep. So, hi, everyone. I am going to give you a quick update on the Justice, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Initiative, or JEDI, as we like to call it, because it's a superpower. So we were looking at the preliminary considerations for incorporating JEDI into the conservation standards. So, yep. Our team, as Caroline pointed out, was mostly Leander Lacey from Lacey Consulting. He really led all of the effort on this. And then Judy, myself, and Ashley were there as backstops, and he had a colleague, Jensine Wright, also working on it. Next slide. So this initiative really fits into strategy 1C here, develop new guidance and tools. We, especially in the context of 2020, which we all know very well, JEDI is a big, important consideration for a lot of organizations right now. And so we really see this initiative as crucial to making sure that the conservation standard stays up to date and is a living, working, breathing framework for conservation organizations. The next slide. So what we did, we wanted to get a better understanding of what CMP members were already doing in terms of JEDI within their organizations. So Leander started out by looking at programs that had written summaries of their JEDI approaches. So he put together 9 program summaries. And then from that, he moved on to doing key informant interviews. So through the process of looking at the program summaries, he came up with a set of, or he helped us determine a set of qualifier characteristics to determine who we wanted to conduct these interviews with. So those included first pass at the organizational level, we wanted to talk to folks who had a defined JEDI approach and principles within their organization. And we wanted to know that they were actively incorporating JEDI considerations into their conservation projects. And then from there, we specifically wanted to talk to people who could tell us more about the specific successes and failures that that organization had faced across their projects. So he ended up conducting 9 key informant interviews. And then the final product is this summary of considerations, which is focused primarily on incorporating JEDI considerations at the project level, not organizationally. And it's organized by in the conservation standards. So next slide. So I pulled out a few of the key takeaways that I wanted to share with you all. The first is that the current conservation organizations in the conservation community tend to focus on JEDI in terms of Indigenous peoples groups, socioeconomic disparity, and women. So there's still a lot of room to better incorporate JEDI principles in terms of the LGBTQ community, gender, race, age, and other identity groups. There's a need to balance organizational Jedi approaches with the programmatic approach. So surprising nobody from the conservation standards community, leadership really matters. It's really important to have leadership that recognizes the importance of Jedi principles and supports their folks in implementing them. And then finally, there's a push from Jedi approaches to be incorporated from funders right now, which is really great. But it often comes with these really short time frames, and especially as Jedi is mostly about relationship building and creating trust, those short timelines often are difficult for organizations and projects to comply with. So next steps here, this is just the beginning. There is still a lot to do. Coming out of this first version, we have a few ideas on how we can share these considerations in more useful formats. So we've talked about putting together a set of PowerPoints or Adobe Spark. We have also been toying with the idea of doing a coaching or facilitation toolkit, although that might come as we have more guidance available as opposed to just considerations. And then of course, we're open to other ideas if you all have formats that you would like to see this information in. And then moving forward, we'd like to develop additional guidance tools and resources to support our conservation organizations in incorporating Jedi approaches as they use the conservation standards. So if you all are interested in this and would like to get involved, my colleague Ashley Baker is not on the line, so you can send her everything. She is running the Jedi group, the CMP Jedi group. So she's a really great person to be in touch with if you want to be more involved with that group. And then additionally, we're looking for resources that you all have found useful in incorporating Jedi approaches. And so if you could share those with her, that would be much appreciated. I don't know if I have time for questions.
You do. Perfect timing.
Excellent. Any questions?
Can I ask, do you have, thank you very much. Do you have something that already relates the Jedi principles into the cycle somehow? Or does somebody have that as a product?
Yeah, so the product that Leander is in the process of developing and submitting right now structures his recommendations along the conservation standards, and it offers users a set of guiding questions that they should ask themselves as they go into each phase. We couldn't take it much further than that given the time frame, but one of the next steps is that we would like to crosswalk those recommendations with the conservation standards and sort of make sure that they're better incorporated into each step.
Great, thank you.
Maybe just if there aren't questions, I'm really glad, Ash or Adrian, that you put this visit our workspace link in here. I did want to, and I neglected to mention it, but there is, I think most of you are familiar with the CMP workspace, but there's a tab for initiatives, and then there are sub-tabs for most of these initiatives you're hearing about should have a space in here, and all the collaborative learning ones are here or have subspaces. So.
We're out of time for that one.
Okay.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Okay, shall I pick up this one?
Yes, please.
Okay, yeah. So this will be here calling from the UK. So I'll be quite brief on this one because, as was mentioned earlier on, we do plan to run some sessions where we'll go through in a little bit more detail in the new year sometime a number of these initiatives or a number of these collaborative learning initiatives. So I'm not going to go into too much detail for the sake of spoiling it, and also because Emma Marston, who was the consultant particularly supporting on this work, isn't available today, and I'd really like her to be on when we do this. But just to explain what the work has been about and where we've got to, because there is a report already available and you're very welcome to actually make use of it. we were revisiting some work that was started last year, and you might possibly remember that we presented it, I think it was about last March, where we were looking at how programs and organizations navigate and manage political risk and uncertainty. So we came back to this topic this year in 2020 because the situation had changed so much. We were operating in this COVID context right around the globe, and it was having some fairly dramatic effects. So we were looking at the some of the ideas, situation, recommendations, approaches that we'd identified in the 2019 work. Coming back to that, looking at it afresh in a COVID context, and also gathering some more diverse inputs this time in terms of geography and in terms of types of organization. And there is a report already available now and will be posted imminently, if not already done, on the website, and which looks again at trends in all sorts of the important factors that are moving on all the time in terms of democracy and the effect of different styles or approaches of leadership, or more authoritarian leaders and more traditional democratic ways of operating, in terms of science and misinformation and shifting government priorities, noting uneven effects. So whilst we're all, affected by COVID, it's quite uneven in its effects around the globe and the way places are responding, and noting that some effects are chronic and some are acute. All the work was assessed before we knew about a vaccine, or that a vaccine might be coming. But of course, we're conscious that there's still going to be the effects, even though that prospect is on the horizon for some places, it's still going to take a good while to work through. In terms of product, as I say, there is a report and it talks about context and situation, what organizations and programs are doing to respond. And so I think many of you may find it relevant context for you to reflect on. And if you just want a short way of reflecting on it and looking at things that you might do, practically speaking, at the back of the report, there's a set of reflective questions around these topics on the right here, of things which are sensible maybe for organizations and programs to ask of themselves. And then if you want to find out what others are doing on that topic, there's a reference to a section of the report where you can find out a bit more about what you could do, how different things are, how different organizations are approaching it. So we've tried to make a sort of a useful, practical, relatively easy way for people to make use of the report, rather than just reading the total report. But there is quite a lot of interesting content there. I think anybody who dives into it will find it really helpful. So as I say, what we will plan to do is go into this in a bit more detail when we do one of these sessions, maybe in the new year, and we'll be doing a slightly longer presentation. That's it.
Will, could I add just one point about the report being available?
Sure.
Yeah, it will be available in the next day or two on that initiatives, that internal website that I showed you. And then I believe it's being reviewed by the guidance committee. And so it will likely be on the conservationstandards.org website shortly as well. And you'll hear more about the guidance committee work in a little bit. But if you ever have problems finding something, you can email me or Sarah and we can direct you to the right place.
Great. Thanks for that, Caroline. That's very helpful.
So any questions for Will? Okay, I'll go on to the next one. And I believe this is Charles.
Yes.
Okay.
Can you?
Shall I navigate for you?
Yes. Next slide, please.
Yep. All right. Let me also get this into full.
Great. Thank you. So my name is Charles. I'm located in Montreal. So yes, this our learning initiative was part of a set of 3 that were also funded by the Moore Foundation. So ours was about the broader environment development agenda and links to conservation. Other two topics were holistic conservation and human well-being strategies, and population health and environment, also known as PHE. So Sheila O'Connor, who could not be here today, is leading this initiative, with myself and Sabina being her right and left hand. We also got a lot of support from many people. So huge thank you to those people who devoted a lot of time in this learning initiative. So that would include Niketi, Jamie, Laura, and also people who provided case studies, including Lisa, Tamia, Julien, and Marco. Participants, thank you to Doreen, Pia, Eleanor, Will, Marianne, Oscar, Vance, Polina, Nick, John, Ronaldo, and Estuardo. Next slide. Okay, so the process that we adopted for this learning initiative was first to collect data from literature reviews, and we conducted a number of interviews with experts, which were more one-on-one, and then group convenings, as well as surveys. So first we started building a situation analysis, trying to document the barriers and opportunities that were related to global and national development agendas, and then building a theory of change. We also developed some case studies just to make sure that what we were documenting were actually found to be significant factors in real case situations. And finally, we identified some future research priorities. Next slide. So not to go too much in detail. So first we had to agree on a definition of what this meant. So we're really talking about high-level political processes involving government-to-government interactions, mainly focusing on sustainable development outcomes. And then how local organizations could interact with those very high-level processes. So how could they either influence or leverage those high-level government and corporate commitments? Next slide, please. So like I said, the first step was to develop a situation analysis where we identified internal and external barriers, and we identified 5 key actors, including conservation organizations, civil society, private corporate sectors, and various levels of government. Next slide. So that's just to give you an idea of the results chains that we built. So again, no time to go through this, but this is the high-level results chains. There's also a more detailed one that will be available. So I think we can move to Sabina, who will.
Hey, I'm Sabina, and so we didn't stop simply at the conceptual theory of change. We kind of vetted the theory of change using 3 case studies that leveraged the UNFCCC Paris Agreement. They leveraged the Convention on Biological Diversity, the Convention on Migratory Species, a regional conservation agreement,